What's the last sound you'd expect to hear in a quiet caravan park at 2 o'clock in the morning? A caravan door closing? The wind whispering through the gum trees? Someone laughing around a dying campfire? What if I told you it was the sound of an axe? Because one cold winter night, while dozens of people slept only meters apart, someone walked silently between the caravans carrying one in their hands. And by sunrise, the peaceful holiday park would never be the same again. The caravan park sat just off the highway, surrounded by gum trees and red dirt. It wasn't the sort of place you'd expect to make the news. Families stopped there on road trips. Gray nomads spent weeks there before moving on. Backpackers pitched tents for a night or two before disappearing down the coast. People left their chairs outside. Some never bothered locking their doors. Everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. That afternoon, just before sunset, an old white ute rolled through the front gates. The driver looked ordinary, middle-aged, unshaven, wearing an old flannelette shirt and dusty work boots. He smiled politely as he paid cash for one night's stay. The woman behind reception asked if he was traveling far. He simply replied, "Just passing through." They would later realize those were the only words anyone ever heard him say. He chose the campsite furthest from reception. He didn't set up a barbecue. He didn't introduce himself to the neighbors. He simply sat outside his caravan as darkness slowly swallowed the park, watching, waiting. As the hours passed, lights inside the caravans began switching off one by one. Children stopped laughing. Conversations faded. Generators went quiet. Before long, the only sounds left were crickets and the wind. Just after 2 in the morning, someone woke to a strange noise. Thunk. A long silence followed. Then, thunk. Half asleep, they frowned. Maybe someone was splitting firewood. Maybe a branch had fallen. Whatever it was, it didn't seem worth getting out of bed. Across the park, another resident heard slow footsteps outside their caravan. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The footsteps stopped right outside their bedroom window. For several seconds, nothing. Then the footsteps continued into the darkness. The resident would later tell police they almost looked outside. Almost. Around 3 o'clock, a dog began barking uncontrollably. It barked so violently that another camper shouted for someone to quiet it down. Moments later, the barking stopped. Completely. No one knows why. The next person to wake was the caretaker. He'd heard knocking at the office door. 3 slow knocks. He assumed someone had locked themselves out. He unlocked the door and disappeared from sight. Nobody heard him again. When sunrise finally arrived, the park felt wrong. Usually there were people making coffee, children riding scooters, someone cooking bacon. That morning, there was almost complete silence. Reception never opened. The caretaker's ute was still parked outside. One of the permanent residents walked over to check on him. The office door was half open. Inside, everything looked normal, until they noticed the muddy boot prints leading into the back room. Police arrived minutes later. The caretaker had been killed. The office looked as though a violent struggle had taken place. Furniture had been overturned, cupboards ripped open, blood stained the walls. As investigators searched the park, the discoveries only became worse. An elderly couple in Caravan 12 never answered their door. Breakfast still sat untouched on the table. Their television was still playing the morning news. A backpacker traveling alone was found inside his cabin. His phone charger was still plugged into the wall. His suitcase remained packed. He'd been planning to leave that morning. He never would. Police quickly realized something terrifying. The killer hadn't targeted one person. They had walked through the caravan park, choosing victims one by one. While everyone else slept only meters away, detectives interviewed every survivor. One woman remembered seeing a silhouette standing beneath a flickering streetlight around 2:30 a.m. She thought it was someone smoking. Another resident recalled hearing slow footsteps circling his caravan before suddenly stopping. A teenage boy admitted he'd looked through a tiny gap in the curtains. He said he saw a man standing perfectly still in the middle of the road, holding something long by his side. He became so frightened, he convinced himself he'd imagined it. By midday, police searched every inch of the caravan park. Then they reached the campsite belonging to the man in the white ute. It was empty. The caravan had gone. The fire pit had never been used. There wasn't a single fingerprint left behind. No rubbish, no clothing, no weapon, just fresh tire tracks leading back onto the highway. Roadblocks were set up across the region. Helicopters searched nearby bushland. Thousands of tips flooded in from across the country. Some claimed they'd seen the white ute days later. Others believed the driver had never existed at all. Despite one of the largest investigations in the area's history, no arrests were ever made. Years passed. The caravan park eventually reopened under new owners. The damaged buildings were repaired. The trees continued to sway in the wind. New travelers arrived every week, completely unaware of what had happened there. But some of the people who survived that night refused to return. Not because they feared the killer, because they feared the sound. Several claimed they'd still wake in the middle of the night hearing it echo in their dreams. Thunk. A long pause. Thunk. The same sound that so many people ignored. The sound they convinced themselves was someone chopping wood. So the next time you find yourself staying in a quiet caravan park, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by nothing but darkness, and you hear something heavy striking the ground outside your window, don't tell yourself it's probably nothing, because that's exactly what everyone else did. And for some of them, it was the last mistake they ever made.